Hello my dear students. Today we are going to learn about pharmacology of respiratory system drugs. But before starting of the respiratory system drugs, we will just quick revise the respiratory system. So basically the respiratory system is concerned with the supply of oxygen to the cells and the removal of carbon dioxide from the cells. That is the supply of O2 and removal of the CO2. We all know. The system consists of air passages and the lungs. So let's have a look at organs of respiration. In this first come nose. The nose is a large cavity in the skull. The walls are bony except those which project from the face. They alone are made of cartilage. The nose is divided into two nostrils by a septum, and air is inhaled through the nostrils where it is warmed, moistened, and the particulate matter is filtered. This point is very important as far as asthma drugs we are going to study in the further lectures. Then second organ for the respiration comes pharynx. This pharynx is a muscular tube which extends from the posterior part of the nostrils to the junction with the esophagus. Thus, the pharynx is a common passage for both air and food. However, when food is ingested or swallowed, it does not enter the larynx below because of the presence of a leaf-shaped flap of cartilage known as the epiglottis, which closes the larynx and directs the food into the esophagus. Rarely the food enters the larynx. When it does, it causes a sensation of irritation and choking, and the food gets expelled by the act of coughing. Then third organ comes tonsils. Tonsils are two nodular collections of lymphoid tissues, one on each side of pharynx. They have a blood vessels, but more importantly, they are richly supplied with the lymphatic vessels containing huge quantities of lymphocytes, which are present in the mucous membrane and that covers the surface of tonsils. These two structures are the first line of defense against infections entering to nose and mouth. And next organ is coming larynx. The larynx lies below the pharynx. It is made of many cartilages. Already we have learned this in anatomy. The largest of these projects from the front neck and is known as the Adam's apple. There are two muscular cords across the larynx. They vibrate when air is forced through them, and thus sounds are produced. These cords are known as vocal cords through which we are speaking. The next organ is coming trachea. The larynx continues into the trachea. This is also called as a windpipe, which is made up of rings of cartilages placed behind the just esophagus. The trachea is lined by ciliated epithelium. The cilia movement directed upwards throws out inhaled particles of dust and other matter. The trachea can be felt in the neck as it passes down into the thorax, and it is divided into two bronchi. Now we can imagine the bronchial tree diagram from where trachea is coming, and that trachea is getting divided into two parts, that is a right bronchus and left bronchus, and that bronchus are again into the bronchi. So these two bronchi divide and redivide to form number of small tubes, and the smallest ones are known as bronchioles. They are purely muscular tubes. The thin bronchiole opens into an irregular balloon-shaped air sac called alveolus, and these alveoli have a very porous epithelial cell wall and is surrounded by a rich network of blood capillaries. It is in the alveoli that exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide takes place through the process of diffusion. So this process is basically takes place in the alveoli. Then lungs is also the part of respiratory system. It is a large number of alveoli form a lobules which together form a lobes to make the lungs. The lungs are 2 in number and situated in the chest, one on each either side of the heart. They are protected by the thoracic cage. They are elastic, porous and spongy in consistency. The lungs are covered by a membrane which is known as the pleura, and this pleura has 2 layers. One lies the lungs and the other lies the thoracic cage. So there is a potential space between these 2 layers. The pleura produces a serous fluid known as the pleural fluid, which act as a lubricant between the 2 layers. So respiration now. We'll see the respiration, how it takes place in a short. 3 steps are involved in respiration. In the first step, air from the atmosphere is taken in. This action is called inspiration. The inspired air via the nose, pharynx, larynx and bronchi reaches the alveoli. In the second step of respiration happens in the alveoli. In the alveoli, the exchange of gases takes place. That is, O2 is taken in and the CO2 is given out by the blood. In the third step of respiration, the CO2 collected in the alveoli is removed by the lungs by the act of expiration. Now, this process of respiration, that is of inspiration and expiration, together we call respiration, is helped by the raising and lowering of the thoracic cage and also by the diaphragm. Now, what is this diaphragm? Diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscular structure which separates the thoracic cage from the abdomen. The lungs rest on this diaphragm. Basically, it's like a dish form. It flattens out during the inspiration. Phrenic nerves from the cervical upward segment of spinal cord control this movement of diaphragm basically. At the same time, the intercostal muscles which lie in between the ribs contract, and this result in the raising of the thoracic cage and an increase in the capacity of the thoracic cavity. This in turn results in air being sucked in, which expands the lungs. And after the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide, the diaphragm goes back to its normal position, that is a dome shape, and so does the thoracic cage. And this causes a decrease in the thoracic capacity, and as a result, the lungs get compressed and carbon dioxide is exhaled out. So this is all about the respiration. We have seen the organs of respiration and respiration.